This lesson is about the particle model and the key concepts that you need to know for your GCSE. So by the end of this lesson, you should understand and have an idea about the structure of the atoms and how that model has changed over the years, and also evidence that is used to test and improve models. You may find that you've already covered this in your chemistry GCSE, so this is a nice little overlap between the two, and this is a really important topic because obviously it could come up in your chemistry exam, but it could also come up in your physics exam. So nice revision for both. So we're going to look at the early models, and the first one was a Greek philosopher, Demetrius, and his idea was develop the atom. So he decided that if you took a object, some matter, and you cut it into ever decreasing particles, eventually you would come down, you wouldn't be able to cut it any further, and he coined that the atom as the smallest part of any matter. And we can represent that as a model, and the model that we use for atoms tends to be these circles that we draw. Then Dalton came along and he came up with the idea that for every element in the periodic table, the atoms for each element are exactly the same. So again, we can represent this as a model. So this would be atoms of all the same elements, they're all the same atoms. We've used colours in little dots, and a different colour could be used to represent a different element, but all of the atoms in each element are the same. Now then, J.J. Thomson came along and he came up with the plum pudding theory. This one is one that comes up in GCSEs quite often. And he realised that the atom has actually got smaller parts to it. And he represented this as a sphere of cloud which is positively charged with negatively charged electrons in between. Now, if you do get this question on a GCSE, my suggestion is that you draw the diagram and then label the diagram, because you can still be awarded the marks for a labelled diagram if you can't come up with the actual wording. Now we come on to more of the physics side, and this was an experiment. It's called the gold leaf experiment, and it was carried out by Geiger and Marston. And what they basically did is they fired atoms at a piece of gold leaf. Now, if J.J. Thomson's model of a part of the atom was correct, then theoretically everything would have gone straight through. What they found is that although most of the particles went straight through, the alpha particles went straight through, some of them were deflected and others were deflected straight back. And this led Ernest Rutherford to propose the nuclear model, saying that there was actually a nucleus inside of the atom where the positive charge was, and that what was happening is that the alpha particles were being deflected. And this then more experiments took place, and this led on to the model which you use most likely now in chemistry. And so what we find is we have a nucleus with the neutrons and protons in the middle, positively charged protons in the middle, and the electrons are in a sphere around the nucleus. So I'd encourage you now to pause the video and have a go at making a table of a summary of the history and the changes. And you won't be expected to remember the dates, but you will need to know the order in which these discoveries were made, and the fact that the models changed because the previous model didn't explain new evidence that was gained through experimentation. So here's a table of the summary and the things that you need to know for your GCSE. So hopefully you now have an understanding of how those models have changed over the years and why it was the evidence that was gained meant that these changes took place.